One of my best friends in seminary was Harv, and I'm not sure why we became such good friends. He was older, married, and had a kid. I don't know why we were such good friends. Maybe we shared an irreverent spirit together. Maybe it was simply we bonded in Hebrew camp as we struggled to study and conjugate Hebrew vowels and verbs and suffered through that together. But I grew close with Harv and his family. So it was a surprise to me one day when he told me he was going into recovery for alcoholism. And I'll have to be honest, I had no idea. I mean, we'd shared a few beers here and there a number of times, but I had no inkling he had a drinking problem. I remember, as I reflected back, there was a time he picked me up at the airport that I thought he was driving rather unsteadily, and it made me wonder. And he would tell me, he shared the stories of how he would hide bottles of wine around the house. Hiding's a very important part of addiction. How he would hide these bottles of wine around the house and that he would drink morning to night. He hid his addiction well. Harv invited me to one of his AA meetings, Alcoholic Anonymous meetings. It was a meeting in which he was receiving his 1-year anniversary chip. They receive a chip, being sober 1 year. And while I had some idea of AA, something I'd seen on TV, some vague sense, I really had no idea what went on in such meetings. And I must confess that it was one of the most astonishing and amazing experiences of my life. As I listened to people share their stories of addiction, stories of incredible and great pain, honest stories about the harm they had caused themselves and to those around them, to those they loved. And I remember being astonished and confronted by the honesty they had of their own weakness, the struggle they continued with that essentially had destroyed their lives. And I remember coming away with a sense that the courage of their vulnerability with each other was a kind of inspiration to me. It was in that meeting that I witnessed both an incredible sense of desperation on one hand, an incredible sense of strength on the other. If you're not aware, the first step in AA is to admit you are powerless over the addiction and that your life has become unimaginable. You cannot, the first step is, you cannot save yourself. And these people shared how they had tried and tried and tried and tried to stop drinking and had failed and failed and failed over and over again. Yet amidst this tales of hopelessness, there was an incredible strength I saw. A strength they found in their higher power in God and in each other. The second and third step, I promise I'm not going through all 12 steps, but the second and third step is to come to believe that there is a power greater than themselves that can restore them to sanity. And there is a decision to make to turn their will and their lives over to the care of God as they understood God. There was something miraculous, and I actually would describe it as mundanely miraculous, in their stories of finding this God, this high power, this grace that sustains them mundanely, miraculously each and every day. It was awful and awesome. Gerald May, a psychiatrist, a theologian, a spiritual director, wrote a book decades ago. I remember reading it. I think I got it soon after having my experience with my friend Harv. And it was titled Addiction and Grace, in which he asserts that every single one of us suffers from addiction. Every single person experiences addiction. As he puts it, and this is the way he puts it, the same processes that are responsible for addiction to alcohol and narcotics are also responsible for addiction to ideas, to work, relationships, power, moods, fantasies, and an entire variety of things. These days, decades later, we could add social media, right? Gerald May says we are all addicts in every sense of the word. And he asserts that it is these addictions, which we tend to deny, which is a quality of addiction, right? To not be aware of it, that are the primary barriers for us to connect to God. As he puts it, they enslave us with chains that are of our own making, yet that paradoxically are virtually beyond our control. Gerald May asserts that addictions are the absolute enemy of human freedom and the antipathy of love. The words of Paul this morning capture for me that essence of this struggle with addiction. In this letter to the church in Rome, he writes about sin and freedom and grace. He says, I don't understand my own actions, for I do not do what I want. Who can relate to that? But I do the very thing I hate. For I have the desire to do good, it lies close at hand, and yet I don't seem to have the ability. So in a way, Paul expresses, and I suspect Paul, like all human beings, wrestled with addiction in some form or other. He identifies this paradox of addiction, the sense that we do not have the freedom to choose the good, even though we really want to. So Paul asserts it is only by the grace of God that we find the true capacity to be set free. Now, this theological idea of paradoxical grace is at the heart of our faith. Our faith expressed in the embodiment of Jesus. And it's actually one of the hardest and most difficult ideas for us to grasp, much less embrace. I think we are far more likely, like most people, to think of that we are in control, right? That we save ourselves, right? We believe we have the willpower or the right character to do good, to claim we believe the right things or to have chosen the right path in life. That's human nature, I think. We want to believe that we have the willpower to save ourselves. Yet, as Paul says, as he asserts, it is only by the abundant gift of God's grace that we are made whole and saved. This is what it means when we say grace saves. Gerald May put it this way. He says, yet it's another paradox. Our addictions actually can lead us to a deep appreciation of grace, because our addictions can finally bring us to our knees and eliminate any idea that we can save ourselves. Now, Richard Rohr, who's also written most recently a book about the 12 steps. Richard Rohr is a Benedictine monk, a spiritual writer. And he's quite critical of the church. And he says, he claims that many Christians, whittle down this great gospel of grace to just some simple moral issue over which we can feel truly triumphant and truly superior, and which really doesn't really ask something of us personally. And he even makes the claim that our innocuous mental belief systems of much religion is, he thinks, the true cause of atheism today. Because people see that they have not generally created religion or Christianity, created followers who are more compassionate, more caring, more creative. As someone anonymous put it at an AA meeting, religion is for people who are afraid of going to hell. Spirituality is for those who have been there. So I must confess, as I reflected on that experience of going to that AA meeting, I think an AA meeting is going to church. Because in an AA meeting, you find a community of people who experience God's grace each and every day and give thanks for it. Because they wouldn't have gotten through the day without that grace. That AA meeting's a church because it's a community of people who profoundly accept each other in all their horrible brokenness and pain and lostness, and do so without judgment. And the AA meeting was church because it's a community of people willing to walk together without judgment, who are there for each other. To God be the glory this day and forevermore. Amen.